The dust rose in slow clouds behind Jake Morrison's old pickup truck as it rolled down the forgotten road. It was the kind of road that barely existed anymore, more memory than reality, cutting through the endless Montana prairie like a scar that had almost healed. The morning sun painted everything gold, and Jake squinted against its brightness as he drove toward what was either the best or worst decision of his life. He had bought the ranch for $1, one single, solitary dollar. The lawyer had looked at him like he was crazy when he signed the papers. Maybe he was. The ranch had been abandoned for decades, sitting empty under the big sky, slowly returning to the earth. No one wanted it. The land was too remote, the buildings too far gone, the location too isolated for modern ranching operations. But Jake had seen something in those faded photographs at the county office, something that whispered to him of second chances. Jake was 52 years old, and his life had not turned out the way he had planned. His marriage had ended 3 years ago. His job at the feed store had disappeared when the store closed down. His daughter Emma was grown and living in Seattle, building a life that had no room for a washed-up rancher with more regrets than prospects. He needed something, a purpose, a place to start over. The ranch appeared on the horizon like a ghost materializing from memory. The main house was a 2-story structure that had once been white but now wore the gray pallor of neglect. The porch sagged in the middle. Windows gaped empty, their glass long since shattered or removed. The roof showed patches of sky through missing shingles. Behind the house stood a barn that leaned heavily to one side as if tired of standing. An old windmill creaked slowly in the breeze, its blades turning with reluctant persistence. Jake stopped the truck and sat for a long moment, just looking. This was home now. This forgotten place was his. He climbed out slowly, his boots crunching on the dry grass. The silence was profound. No traffic sounds, no voices, no hum of electricity, just wind and the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. Jake walked toward the house, his heart beating with something between excitement and fear. The porch steps groaned under his weight but held. The front door hung open, inviting him into shadows. Inside, the house smelled of old wood and time. Sunlight streamed through the broken windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the still air. The rooms were empty except for debris, old newspapers, broken furniture, scraps of a life long abandoned. Jake spent the first hour just walking through the house, getting to know it. 4 rooms downstairs, 3 bedrooms upstairs. The bones were good, he could see that. The structure was sound, despite appearances. It would take work, mountains of work, but it could be salvaged. He could live here. He could make something of this place. In the kitchen, he found an old calendar still hanging on the wall. March 1987, 38 years ago. Whoever lived here last had walked away and never looked back. Jake wondered what their story was. What made someone leave everything behind? What dreams had died in these rooms? He decided to start with the barn. The afternoon sun was hot on his back as he crossed the yard. The barn doors resisted at first, then scraped open with a sound like a sigh. Inside, the air was cooler and smelled of old hay and leather. Light filtered through gaps in the walls, creating stripes of gold across the dirt floor. Old tools hung on the walls. A rusted tractor sat in one corner. Everything was covered in dust and cobwebs, preserved like a museum of forgotten industry. Jake began clearing space, moving old equipment, sweeping away years of accumulated debris. He was not sure what he was looking for, maybe just a sense of order. A beginning, something to show that he was here now, that this place was returning to life. He was moving a pile of rotten boards when he noticed it. A section of the barn floor that sounded different under his feet, hollow. He knelt down and brushed away the dirt with his hands. Wood planks, but these were different from the rest, newer, or at least less old. They formed a square about 4 feet across. And there was a metal ring, rusted but still intact, set into one of the boards. Jake's heart began to beat faster. He pulled on the ring. The boards resisted, then lifted with a groan of old hinges. Beneath was a space, a root cellar maybe, or a hiding place. Jake pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut down into darkness, revealing stone steps descending into the earth. He hesitated only for a moment, then began to climb down. The steps were solid, carved from stone. They descended about 12 feet before opening into a small chamber. Jake swept the light around, his breath caught in his throat. The room was perhaps 10 feet square with stone walls and a dirt floor. But it was not empty. Against one wall stood a wooden chest, old but well preserved in the cool underground air. Next to it were shelves containing glass jars and tin containers. And on the far wall, someone had carved words into the stone. Jake moved closer, reading slowly. To whoever finds this, we came here in 1825 with nothing but hope. This land gave us everything. May it give you the same. God bless and keep you. Samuel and Martha Crawford. Jake's hands trembled as he opened the chest. Inside were journals. Dozens of them, leather-bound and filled with careful handwriting. The first one was dated 1825. Jake lifted it carefully and opened to the first page. Today we arrived at our land, it began. After 3 months of travel, we have reached the place where we will build our future. There were other things in the chest, old photographs, letters tied with ribbon, a Bible with family names written inside, and at the bottom, wrapped in oilcloth, was something that made Jake's breath catch. Land documents, original deeds, and a hand-drawn map showing water sources, mineral deposits, and property boundaries. But more than the documents, more than any potential value they might have, it was the journals that transfixed Jake. He sat down on the stone steps and began to read. Samuel and Martha Crawford had come west when Montana was still a frontier. They had built this ranch with their own hands. They had raised 7 children here. They had survived blizzards and droughts and all the hardships of frontier life. The journals chronicled it all, births and deaths, triumphs and tragedies, the daily texture of lives fully lived. The last entry was dated 1893. Samuel was dying. Martha had passed 2 years before. The children were all grown and gone east. This ranch has been my life, Samuel wrote in a shaky hand. I leave it to the future, to whoever might need it as I once did. May they find here what I found, not wealth but purpose, not ease but meaning, a place to belong. Jake read until the light faded and he had to climb back up into the barn. He stood in the gathering dusk, the journal still in his hands, and felt something shift inside him. He was not just some desperate man who had bought a ruin for $1. He was a link in a chain, a continuation of a story that had begun 200 years ago. He pulled out his phone and called Emma. "Hey, Dad," she answered, surprised. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," Jake said, and his voice was stronger than it had been in years. "Everything's good. I found something today, something important. I want to tell you about this ranch, about the people who built it, about why I am here." They talked for an hour as the stars came out above the prairie. Jake told her about Samuel and Martha, about the journals, about the weight of history and the gift of second chances. Emma listened, really listened, in a way she had not in years. "I might come visit," she said finally. "If that's okay." "It's more than okay," Jake said. "It's perfect." After they hung up, Jake walked back to the house. In the darkness, it looked different. Not abandoned, not dead, just waiting for someone to bring it back to life. To continue the story, he had bought this ranch for $1, but he understood now that the price was much higher than that. It required his commitment, his labor, his belief. It required him to become part of something larger than himself. Jake stood on the sagging porch and looked out at the land bathed in starlight. Tomorrow he would begin repairs. He would make this place whole again. He would honor the people who had built it with their dreams and sweat. He had come here lost, and now he was found. The ranch had been waiting, and so had he.